Snow drifted in soft spirals down the steep slope as Elira adjusted her scarf and pressed forward. Through the dense mountain trail, the cold biting at her exposed fingers. She had made this trek countless times, collecting herbs and wild roots to sell at the local market. But something about today felt different. Maybe it was the strange quiet, or maybe it was the sudden whisper of wind that carried no birdsong. No matter what she had, to keep going, the village depended on women like her, and the few rupees she earned helped her little brother eat her boots, crunched against ice-crusted earth as she reached a bend in the trail. The pine trees thinned, revealing a jagged cliff edge, and just as she turned her eyes, caught a flicker of movement. Below, something dark, unmoving, lying on the slope. She froze, squinting through the snowfall. Her breath caught when she realized it was a person without. A second thought, she scrambled down the slick incline, grabbing branches and rocks to slow her. The scent, the cold stung her face as snow slipped into her boots. But she didn't stop, not when someone could be dying down there. As she neared the figure, she saw it was a man, tall, wearing expensive clothes, not meant for hiking one of his legs. Bent unnaturally, and blood staining the snow around him, sir. She gasped, dropping to her knees. Beside him, "Can you hear Mitha?" Man groaned, barely conscious, his face, pale lips, turning blue, and felt the terrifying chill of skin. Too cold to survive much longer, hold on, she whispered, and pulled her shawl from her shoulders, wrapping it around him. She checked his pulse, strong but slowing, and then looked up the slope, dreading the climb. Back she had no phone, no radio, nothing. But her hands and the will to get him help. She pulled him gently, checking his leg again. It was definitely broken, and moving him would make it worse, but leaving him meant death. She whispered a prayer, then grabbed him under the arms and began dragging his body up inch by painful inch, her feet sliding. The man, moaning in pain tears, blurred her vision. But she pushed forward, muscles screaming, arms burning. She thought of her brother, of all the times no one had come to help them when they needed it. The government, the wealthy, the people who never looked their way. She would not be like them. After nearly an hour, she reached the top, drenched in sweat. Despite the snow, she collapsed beside the man, breathing heavily. Her village was still a mile away, and there was no one nearby. She had to go get help. But could she leave him alone? She pulled his coat tighter around him, then ran as fast as she could back through the trees. Heart-pounding lungs, heaving, her legs ached, but she didn't stop. Not once. By the time she reached the village, her voice was hoarse, and her face nearly frozen. She stumbled into the small bakery where the old baker, Eunice, stood wiping his hands. "Help," she gasped, A man, on the slope. He's hurt, badly. Please, Eunice, didn't. Asked questions, he called for his son, and grabbed blankets and a wooden sled. They followed. Elira, back up the mountain, her legs barely holding her as they climbed. They found the man where she had left him, shivering but alive. Together they loaded him onto the sled and brought him down slowly, carefully, all the way to the healer's hut in the center of the village. The healer, an old woman named Darya, took one look at the man and cursed under her breath. His leg's bad, she muttered. Lost a lot of blood. He needs heat and rest. Elira stayed while Darya set the bone and cleaned the wound, holding the man's hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. His name was whispered, once Adam, but he said little else. She sat beside his bed long after everyone had gone, the fire crackling, the shadows dancing across his face. He was handsome under the bruises, strong jaw, high cheekbones, short dark hair, the kind of man who came from a world very far from hers. Why was he up there, she wondered. He had no hiking gear, no food, no pack, just his clothes and a strange silver watch that looked more expensive than anything she'd ever touched. When the healer returned hours later, she nodded quietly. He'll live, thanks to you. Elira looked at him. Then, back at the old woman. What will he do when he wakes up? Darya shrugged. If he's smart, he'll leave this place and never climb a mountain alone. Again Elira rose, brushing snow from her skirt. I should go, my brother is alone. Darya caught her wrist. You did a brave thing, child. Not many would have done what you did. Elira only nodded, then slipped into the night, back to her small shack near the river where her little brother Karim lay sleeping, unaware that his sister had carried a man back from the brink of death. The next morning, the snow had stopped and the sky shone blue and bright. Elira returned to the healer's hut, bringing warm broth and boiled herbs. Darya was gone on errands, but the man was awake, sitting up slowly, eyes scanning the room. You saved me, he said. Voice Graveliella placed the bowl on the table. I found you. I just did what anyone would do. That's not true, he said softly. Most would have left Mesh, didn't know what to say. His voice was deep and clear, and his eyes a strange shade of green like pine needles. After rain, he looked at her like he was trying to remember something. My name is alone, slipped, fell. I don't remember much. She didn't press further. Something in his eyes said there was more to it, but it wasn't her place to ask. He was safe now. That was what mattered. Thank you, Elira. He saved my life, she smiled faintly. I just did what I could. Over the next few days, Adam grew stronger. Darya taught him how to use crutches, and Illyra brought food when she could, though her own pantry grew thinner each time she told Kareem that Adam was just a man who got hurt and needed help, nothing more. But Adam watched her every time she came, and one evening he asked her, "Why do you keep helping Jalira?" Looked at the fire, "Because I've needed help before, and no one came because you were alone and afraid, and I've been." That to Adam said nothing, but that night, after she left, he stared at the ceiling for hours, eyes widened. The sixth day, a black SUV roared into the village tires, crunching snow. 3 men in black coats jumped out, one rushing into the healers' hut. "Sir, thank God we found you." Lyra was outside chopping wood when she heard the voices and dropped her axe inside. The men were speaking quickly, explaining that the helicopter couldn't land due to the storm, that they had been searching all with you're safe now, one of them said. "You'll be back in the city by morning." Adam looked past them at Illyra, who stood in the doorway, silent eyes wide. "Wait," he said firmly, "I'm not leaving yet." Men blinked, but Siri said white. Illyra stepped back, unsure of what she'd walked into that night. Adam sat with her by the river, watching the moonlight flicker across the water. "I haven't been honest with you," he said. Quietly, she turned to him. "Not just some hiker. I own the land you found me on the whole mountain. And more, I run a company. I'm not from here." Lyra was silent. "I fell because I was angry, thinking of something foolish. I ran without telling anyone. I deserved the fall, maybe even the cold. You risked your life." She looked down, unsure how to respond. "Oh, you more than I can say." "Illyra owe me nothing," she said softly. "I didn't do it for reward." "I know," he said, "but I'm going to change your life anyway." She turned to him, her eyes filled with questions. "Let me help you." She shook her head slowly. "I don't want money then." "Let me stay," he said quietly. "Let me understand who you are." Lyra didn't answer. The wind rustled the trees, and far in the distance, a wolf howled, but she stood quietly, unsure whether her life was about to change or break. The sun filtered gently through the pine branches as Illyra walked along the stream, her bare feet moving slowly over the rocks. The morning chill brushing her skin. She had come to gather water, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She could still hear Adam's voice from the night before. "Let me stay. Let me understand who you are." No one had ever said that to her before. Not like that. Not with those eyes that held both gratitude and something else. Something deeper she dared not name. She'd spent her life surviving, not dreaming. There was never time or space for anything more than duty behind. The crunch of footsteps made her turn. Adam walked with his crutches, slower today, but stronger. His clothes were cleaner, his coat now mended by Darius' daughter, yet he still wore the same silver watch gleaming in the sunlight. "Didn't mean to scare you last night," he said, softly, stopping a few feet away. "I just wanted to be." Ananstallira studied him. "You don't belong here?" He nodded. No, I don't. But maybe that's the point. Maybe I need to." She crouched by the water, filling a tin jug, watching the ripples move across the surface. "This place isn't what people like you are used to," he replied. "I didn't even know how to breathe before I came here." She didn't speak, just lifted the jug and walked back toward the village. Adam followed, keeping pace best he could. The village children ran past, laughing, chasing a rolling hoop made of wire. One girl stopped staring at Adam wide-eyed before running off again. "You scare them," she said. With a half-smile. "Good," he grinned. "I probably look like a scarecrow on sticks." That made her laugh, a soft, short sound that surprised even her, and something shifted between them later that day. Adam met Kareem, a shy boy with large brown eyes and an old jacket several sizes too big. He was reading by the fire, tracing the words with his fingers slowly, lips moving silently. Elira stood nearby, peeling potato cream. Adam said, kneeling with difficulty beside him, "That book, do you like it?" Kareem nodded quietly. "Do you want more books?" Kareem looked up uncertainly, then at Elira, who only watched silently. "I have thousands. You can have as many as you want." The boy's eyes lit up, but he said nothing that night. Elira sat outside, watching the stars. Kareem, already asleep inside, she didn't hear Adam approach, but felt his presence. "You should go back to your world," she said quietly before he could speak. "You don't belong in these shadows." "What if I don't want light anymore?" he said. "What if the shadows feel real?" She turned her head to look at him. The firelight touched his face, painting soft orange along his cheekbones. "You can't live between two worlds." "Then let me choose this one," he said. She shook her head slowly. "This one is hard. It's hungry, sometimes. So was I before I fell." They sat in silence until the stars turned overhead and the cold pressed deeper into their bones. And when they parted, there was something between them, unspoken and heavy, like a thread waiting to be tied. The next morning, the SUV returned, this time with more men. Clean, sharp-eyed, with laptops and satellite phones, they set up camp by the edge of the village, and the mayor, a tired man with thinning hair, welcomed them nervously, was standing with Elira when the men approached. "Sir, we need to debrief you about the merger and the press conference and the audit later, Adam said firmly. Not now, sir. The schedule said later. They hesitated, then stepped back, whispering among themselves. You. Re-important, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. He looked at her. Alira. If I walked away from it all right now, I'd be fine. I'd have peace because I found something here that I never had before. She frowned. What could you possibly want from this? He looked around. The quiet, the fire, the honesty, she said. People lie here too. They steal. They're just poor. While they do it tend you, he asked. Have you lied? She looked at him, eyes steady. I've hidden, but I haven't lied. Then you're more honest than anyone I've met in years. That night, he sat with Kareem, helping him sound out difficult words from a book he had borrowed from the car. One of the guards had brought it over, reluctantly looking confused that a billionaire wanted to lend books to a village boy. Next day, Adam called a small meeting outside the healer's hut, where the villagers gathered, curious and cautious. This mountain is mine, he said clearly, and I've decided to give a part of it to this village. Murmurs rippled through the crowdium. Setting up a trust, he continued, a foundation. It'll fund education, medicine, clean water for as long as you need. It'll be managed by someone from the village. The mayor stepped forward, confused. Why? Why would you do this? Adam looked at Alira, who stood at the edge of the crowd. Because I was dying here, and someone saved me. She didn't ask who I was or what I had. She just saved me. Alira looked away, face unreadable. Later, she found him near the trail where she'd first dragged him up the slope. You didn't need to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Are trying to buy gratitude. No, I'm trying to give back what was freely given. She was silent for a long time, then asked, Will you leave? I have to for now, but I'll return. I promise. People don't keep promises. Here I'm not people. She looked at him, eyes softer than before. What if you forget? What if the mountain becomes just another place? To you it won't, because it has a name now. Yours. Before he left, he handed Kareem a bag full of books, pencils, a small tablet, and a card with his number. If you need anything ever, you call me. Okay. Kareem nodded, clutching the bag like treasure. I turned to Alira. One last time. I meant what I said. I'll come back. She nodded once, then stepped back. Then he was gone, swept into the SUV, disappearing into the winding road that led back to the world he had come from weeks past. The snow began to melt. Spring pushed into the valley like a whisper, and the trees bloomed with cautious color. Alira returned to her routine, gathering herbs, selling roots, caring for Kareem. The villagers spoke of Adam, often wondering if the promises were real. Then one day, a letter came, not in her mailbox, but in her hand. delivered by a man in uniform. It was short. I haven't forgotten you. I never will. I'll be back before the next. Snow. Illyra held the note for a long time, fingers trembling, heart pounding. She said nothing, but that night she left a second plate at the table, even though Kareem asked who it was for, and she just smiled. Time moved like honey, thick and slow, and the seasons changed again. Then, one morning, a familiar SUV climbed the mountain trail. This time, slower, more careful. And Adam stepped out, not in a suit, not with an entourage, just him, wearing a worn coat and boots that had finally seen snow again. Illyra was waiting by the stream where he'd first followed her all those months ago. You came back, she said softly. I told you I would. She looked at him, and for the first time her guard lowered completely. Missed the quiet, he said. I missed the shadows. You missed me, she corrected gently. Yes, he said, without hesitation. I missed you most of all. The wind carried the scent of pine and damp soil as Illyra walked beside Adam down the familiar mountain trail. Her fingers brushed against the cold bark of trees she had passed her entire life. But now, everything felt different beside him. The woods no longer seemed heavy or lonely. They walked in silence, his steps slow and measured, his leg still stiff from the injury, but stronger now. They didn't need words, not anymore. Kareem had grown bolder in the months since Adam returned. His confidence had bloomed like wildflowers after rain. His books were stacked beside his mattress, and he had begun to teach other children how to read, mimicking Adam's tone and patience. Illyra had watched from the doorway, heart swelling as her brother turned into someone fearless. Adam had kept every promise. The village school had books now, and glass windows that didn't rattle in the wind. The healer's hut had been rebuilt, and a proper road now led into the village, cutting the travel time in half. The foundation he created sent warm clothes before winter arrived, and even an internet tower stood proudly on the edge of the valley, as strange as a spaceship, but welcomed like a blessing. Illyra never asked how he managed it all, but she knew it came at a cost. She had once overheard him on a call, late at night, voice low, words sharp and decisive, like a man carrying the weight of a world she still couldn't understand. It all fell away, and he was just Adam, the man she had pulled from death with numb fingers and trembling hands. One evening, as the sky burned orange, they sat by the fire outside her house, Kareem already asleep inside. Adam held something in his hand, a small velvet box. He turned it over slowly, then looked at Harvey. Been thinking, he said. I've had time to think here more than I ever did in my other life. She waited, watching the firelight dance in his eyes. Night, you saved me. Something changed inside me. Not just my body, my direction, my purpose. You didn't know who I was, and you still gave me everything you had. That kind of love doesn't disappear. She felt her breath catch, want to stay. Not just visit, not just pass through. I want to build here, live here with you if you'll let mesh. Looked down the fire, crackling between them. The girl who once scraped roots from frozen earth had never imagined a moment like this. Adam reached across and placed the box gently in her hand. She opened it slowly. Inside was a simple silver ring etched with a tiny mountain symbol. Not flashy, not grand, just honest and beautiful. I don't need anything else, he said. Just this place, and you and Kareem. Throat tightened. She thought of every time she had shivered in the dark, wondering if anyone would ever choose her, if anyone would ever stand. Now, here, he was broken and healed by the very hands she once believed were only meant for labor. Yes, she whispered, yes, I want that too. They said nothing more, just sat with the silence wrapped around them, the stars watching from above. In the months that followed, the village bloomed. Children laughed louder, crops grew stronger, and the mountain that once loomed like a fortress now felt like home. Adam built a small cabin beside Alira's, not out of stone or steel, but wood carved by his own hands, guided by Kareem, who had decided he wanted to be an architect. When he grew up, the three of them would sit by the stream, sharing stories or dreams, or simply the quiet, the world below. The mountain still moved fast and ruthless, but here time bent for them. Stillness. One morning, a letter arrived from the city. A new opportunity, a position of power, wealth, prestige waiting if Adam chose to return. He read it, then folded it once and set it in the fire, watching the flames eat it slowly. Didn't even hesitate, Alira said, watching him. "My already chose." He replied. Still she wondered if the mountain would always be enough for him, if the man who once wore tailored suits and walked in marble halls could truly forget the taste of that world. But he proved it every day, not with grand gestures, but with small ones, like the way he planted a tree for every child born in the village, or the way he carved wooden toys for Kareem with careful fingers, or the way he looked at her as if she had saved more than just his life. One cold evening, a storm rolled in fierce and fast-cutting power to the entire valley. The villagers gathered in the old hall, now insulated and warm. Thanks to Adam's efforts, he stood beside Alira, holding a lantern high and directing supplies, blankets, food, warmth. Is your doing, someone said to him. You gave us this. No, he replied. Illyra gave me this. I just shared. It tanned. People believed it because it was true. As the storm howled outside, Illyra sat by the fire. Kareem curled against her side, and Adam beside her, hands clasped in hers. The wind could rage, all it wanted, the mountain could shake, but inside that hall there was peace. Later, as they lay beneath thick blankets, Adam whispered, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come? That Dash turned her head, eyes meeting his. You would have died in, so would I, he said softly. Just a different kind of death. She pressed her forehead to his. And they stayed like that, breathing together, the past gone, the future unwritten, and the present. Perfect tears passed, and their story became legend among the children, who played near the slope where Illyra had once found a dying man. They said she was a mountain spirit who saved a lost soul, or that he was a king disguised as a stranger. But those who knew them knew better. She was a poor girl with a strong heart and empty hands, who gave everything without expecting anything in return. And he was a man who had everything but learned that love was the only thing that ever made him rich. Together they lived on the mountain, not as strangers, not as survivors, but as family, and their love rooted itself deeper than the oldest tree. Their story whispered in the wind that curled around the cliffs where it all began. Sometimes on snowy nights, when the world was quiet, you could still see them walking together along the ridge, side by side, hand in hand, two shadows bound by fate and grace and the power of one brave act that changed everything forever.